Welcome back to the MizzouToday Show. I'm your host, Kenny Van Doren, always joined by Kyle McAreavy. Kyle, this is a big game. Mizzou versus Alabama. We have to get right into it because this one felt like coming into the year, and we can go back to our predictions as we get later into the show, where it felt like, if Mizzou really had, aspirations of, of course they did, of making the college football playoff and competing until the end and getting deep into the postseason. This might have been one of those games that you'd say, hey, Mizzou might drop this one, still being a chance to lose two games, possibly three, and be on the outside looking in, really vying for one of those last spots. But now Mizzou really has a chance. I feel like a lot of the national recognition for this game is that they're seeing a lot of positives in this Mizzou offense, a lot of positives on the Mizzou defensive line, a lot of unheralded players, of course, and it kind of comes with the name and recognition of Missouri the past couple of years, but feels like things are trending in the right direction in the sense of people are understanding what this Mizzou team is about. And Kyle, I think, a good place to start from there is that, you've talked to some of the Alabama people, you've been on some of these radio stations and podcasts already talking to these reporters and just those that covered the Alabama Crimson Tide. What's the sense just around Mizzou in this matchup?
The sense from the Alabama people tends to be pretty respectful. I mean, I think a lot of Alabama people are looking at this as, an actual game, which, there's some SEC teams that aren't necessarily as respectful. But it seems like Alabama media especially is taking this one pretty seriously and kind of looking at it as, Mizzou coming in with a real shot, which, hasn't always been the case for the Tigers since joining the SEC when they've lined up against Bama. I think this is about the closest talent-wise that this matchup has been since Mizzou became an SEC team, and that's because Mizzou has raised its talent level these past couple of years. You can look back on last season's matchup if you want to, but I think it's just completely different. I mean, we've talked so much about all the new faces on the field in Columbia, but more importantly, Mizzou's just going in pretty healthy instead of, looking at a game where Drew Pine was, had a pretty good chance to start if Brady Cook wasn't all the way back and then ended up coming in anyways. You're missing, I think, Mookie Cooper. That was the first game he was out. Nate Noel was out. Like, there was just so much about Mizzou's offense specifically that wasn't at 100% and seems like it should be this week.
It's weird to think that this will only be the 9th meeting between these two teams in the sense that, they've been in the SEC for 10 plus years now, that being Missouri. And so last time Missouri beat Alabama was 1975, Monday, September 8th. Kind of funny, a Monday game, Birmingham, Alabama, 20-7. This is coming from the Mizzou archives. The fun thing about this one, and this is because I was a sophomore in college when this game happened, when Missouri took on Alabama at home last game, that was Eli Drinkwitz's first game as the Missouri Tigers head coach. Big, very different game now, different, sense of where Missouri football is compared to that game. But one of the big things that I've always kind of taken, as a positive from that 38-19 loss is that Drinkwitz was coaching until the final seconds of that game. He was calling timeouts. He was looking for opportunities to score. And that was the tightest game that Alabama really played that season, albeit it was the COVID season. So not a lot of close games here and there, and a very just weird year in general. But outside of, the national championship game, Mizzou really gave the best game to Alabama that year. It was the opening year. There was a lot of NFL players, Heisman winners on there, a Heisman winner on that team in Alabama. But this time around, too, just the opening line from BetMGM right now is a 3-point favorite for Alabama. So I guess a neutral site, you'd be looking at 6. But that's still a good spot. I mean, you've seen this line kind of move around from 2.5, a little bit over 3 in favor of Alabama. But from that point of view, Kyle, and just what this game kind of means for Missouri and just, historically as well with SEC Nation coming back second time this season. And I'll tell you this too, maybe I'll date myself. I'm not that old, but the last time SEC Nation came to Missouri before this year was my freshman year in 2019 when they played West Virginia. So that kind of shows you how much Missouri's image has changed. But from that point of view too, just how much this game means, what have you kind of just like felt, from talking to players, talking to Drinkwitz, and just kind of seen from what you've seen on social media and the message board of what this game means for Missouri?
Yeah, I mean, games like this don't come around a ton. There's been the stat circling that this is the first AP top 15 matchup in Columbia in oh man, I don't remember exactly how long, but it was decades. That's a little bit skewed because there was a CFP top 15 matchup against Tennessee in 2023, and there was a BCS top 15 matchup in 2010 or 2000.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. Oklahoma. Yeah. So, those other rankings tend to be more important at the end of the season when you're looking at the CFP or the old BCS. But it is important with historical context because the AP has been doing a poll for a long time. And this is, the first AP top 15 matchup in Columbia in a long time. It feels similar to me to the LSU game back in 2023. It's about, I think, almost exactly the same week of the season. So it's been about 2 years since the Tigers have lost at home. And it's just kind of that mid-season, you've looked good so far, but can you actually compete with the big boys? And, Alabama, I know it seems like they were a little bit down last year. They lost the season opener to Florida State, and that made them 5-5 in their last 10 at that point. It's still Alabama. I mean, to be an actual CFP contender, to be an actual SEC contender, you have to be able to beat the best, and Alabama is still up there among the best.
I was looking at the date for that LSU game to October 7th, 2023, recording this preview for the Alabama game on October 8th. So just, a couple days off. And it is very weird to think, for a team that I watched growing up in college compared to where the program is now under Drinkwitz. And the expectations for this game is a big one. I know a lot of people are pulling for game day these last couple of weeks, maybe South Carolina beat Vanderbilt. And then this game as well, but really Oregon and Indiana took the crown there. Let's get into some of the more game basics and some information that you've picked up from press conferences this week. I know you just got off the teleconference as well with Eli Drinkwitz and Kalen DeBoer both speaking among the other SEC head coaches. What did you just pick up this week on maybe some key notes that people need to know going into this matchup?
Before I do keynotes, there was a fun thing on the teleconference that I tweeted out, which was Eli goes at 11:20 and DeBoer goes at 11:30. So kind of at the end of Eli's segment, he asked the host, he's like, hey, can I stay on and ask Kalen the first question? He goes, I think everyone on the call would like that a lot. He didn't end up asking the first question. I think it was like the third or fourth, but there was kind of a pause and they go, all right, the next question's coming from Missouri coach Eli Drinkwitz. He comes on and goes, hey, Kalen, are you wearing the black hoodie of death on our sideline this weekend while we're wearing black uniforms? He goes, we'll see what the forecast is, but it seems likely. It's just...
That's awesome. Yeah, that is classic Drink. It doesn't get that much better than that.
Yeah, that was definitely a fun moment. All right, so keys for the game that I've picked up. I mean, the big one, the players to look out for Alabama. I mean, Ty Simpson is, I think, the Heisman frontrunner now at this point, or he's up there among them, certainly, because he's been fantastic, Alabama's quarterback. And, we've talked a lot about how Missouri's secondary has struggled at times this year, especially with deep passes. And Ty Simpson has Ryan Williams on the outside, who's one of the more electric receivers in college football. I mean, that matchup specifically has worried me looking forward these past 2 weeks now with the bye, because it feels like if the communication issues in the Tigers secondary are not resolved after the bye week, then Ryan Williams is set up to have a pretty big game.
I think from that point of view too, and you kind of look at it like those matchups and maybe some positions that where some guys are standing out a little bit more. We've heard a lot about maybe this defensive line being a problem for the Alabama offensive line. As much as I know you pointed it out, maybe some weaknesses to exploit with the run game and just like how they've not been able to stop the run game or really maybe generate too much run game for Alabama as good as it's been in the last couple of years. Of course, when you think of some of the best running backs that made it to the NFL, how much of an advantage does Mizzou really have with its defensive front trying to stop this Alabama run game?
Yeah, I mean, Alabama's run game has been the weaker part of its offense throughout this season. That was affected because Jam Miller didn't play the first 3 games, and Alabama struggled to run the ball without him. It's been better these past couple of weeks with him back, but he was basically the entire run game last week. I man, I looked up the numbers like an hour ago and they're lost on me. But I think Alabama had like 140-ish rushing yards against Vanderbilt, and Jam Miller had like 125. It's a domination of what they want to do on the ground by Jam Miller. So if the Tigers are able to use that run defense that has been so good through these first 5 games and can effectively stop Miller, I think they will effectively stop Alabama's run offense as a whole and kind of make it a one-dimensional game through the air like we've seen the Tigers do to a couple of teams. The issue is Alabama's passing offense is going to be significantly better than what the Tigers have seen anybody else do this season.
I guess we can go from there, and I want to get back to the run game just in a second. But the big like conversation, maybe the idea of Mizzou's schedules the last 3 years from a national perspective is that Mizzou hasn't played anyone. Like that's what it's always kind of come down to. They've had a nice swing of their schedule from it being 8 home games this season, or maybe facing a little bit more of the weaker SEC competition. And Drinkwitz has still spoken highly about the last place team probably in the SEC is better than it's going to be in the Big Ten. I mean, that everyone can kind of agree with that. It's a little bit more of a better like balance there, even though there's still the top dogs at the top that are going to feed off some of those wins. But this is like your first, true SEC test. South Carolina team that came in, Mizzou really handled it at the end. Mizzou took advantage. They knew what they were doing. This is like the best way to open it. If Missouri can take a win, I mean, that changes the whole national perspective on Missouri. It really boosts the image even more. And Missouri is still not going to, accept that. It's still going to be the something to prove. And like that Missouri, no one looked at Missouri the same way that they did at the beginning of the season, kind of a thing. But with that as well, how can Missouri really, take advantage of that and really kind of come out not flat-footed, but avoid the flat-footedness that they have in some of these like more up contests from the past couple of years?
Yeah, I'll say on that kind of narrative, like last year, yeah, that was pretty true. Mizzou came out incredibly flat against Texas A&M, and like we talked about earlier, I kind of separate the Alabama game on as its own thing because of the amount of injuries to the offense, and the defense was playing pretty well through the first half until Drew Pine threw 3 interceptions in like 5 drives, and just set the defense up for failure. So that's kind of its own thing, but the team did still come out kind of flat in that game too. I think the issue there was more that they were on the road, and the Tigers, they were the first 2 road games last year. Well, I think UMass might have been sandwiched in between, but UMass is, a different thing. First 2 SEC road games. Let's go with that. And Drinkwitz has talked a good bit about wanting to change the procedure for road games a bit to try to avoid that type of letdown. You could also look at it as that Texas A&M game last year was the first game coming off the first bye, and the Tigers came out a little flat. So how do you avoid coming out a little flat coming off your bye? Drinkwitz said there was some different procedure about how the Tigers handled this bye. They did a lot of good on good practices, ones versus ones, kind of throughout last week, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week. But with the knowledge that they can't wear guys down in practice because of how many tough games are coming up. And that kind of feeds into the, Mizzou soft scheduling conversation. To this point, it's been a pretty easy schedule. I mean, I think according to ESPN, it's like the 105th strength of schedule through the first 6 weeks now. And the rest of the way, it's number 7 or so. There isn't an easy schedule in the SEC, but even then, a preseason ranking of strength of schedule never affects me too much because you just don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know that South Carolina is going to be not the team that it was expected to be. You don't know that Oklahoma and Texas A&M are both going to be top 5-ish teams by the time you face them. There's just so much that can change over time.
And what a great time to have that bye week too. Like you were saying, that this is probably the best lined up way for it to really open SEC play. You get 1 home game, 2 on the road, then you get your next bye and really kind of get ready for some of those big SEC matchups that follow to end the season. One more thing I want to get back to, like I mentioned, just about the run game. I know Eli Drinkwitz always talks about, he wants his quarterback to maybe pick up 2 first downs with his legs. He always wants to get the running game going because that's how you really activate the passing game. And Mizzou has not had any troubles about getting this running game active. What are you expecting from Ahmad Hardy? I know you're going to get into your predictions later this week on Mizzou Today on the website. But what are you kind of expecting from this run game against Alabama?
I mean, the run defense is the lesser part of Alabama's defense. So if the Tigers are able to, run the ball and stop the run, like Drinkwitz always talks about, are the two primary things that they want this team to be built around. And that does play into the weaker parts of Alabama's offense and defense this week, right? So if the Tigers are able to kind of attack the ground game the way that they have through the first 5 games, then yeah, we could be looking at another pretty big Ahmad Hardy game, or Ahmad Hardy plus Jamal Roberts type of game. And Alabama's struggled against the run. Last week was a slightly different story for the Tide. I know they gave up like 110-ish rushing yards in the first quarter, and then 22 after that. So it's going to be finding the consistency in the run game, because you can put up a big number, but if for 3/4 of the game, like Vanderbilt, you're only able to end up, at 25 or 30 rushing yards, that's not enough. You've got to consistently run the ball effectively throughout the game, like we've seen the Tigers do these first 5 weeks.
Before we get into maybe some more notes, I know you have some injury updates to provide as well, and some other just keys to the game, anything that came up that we didn't talk about. We have a quick word from our sponsors over at Rhoback. And of course, if you're watching with us on YouTube, we're both rocking the Rhoback right now. But Rhoback Activewear, there's only one way to describe Rhoback: best fit, best feel. For those who aren't familiar with Rhoback, they're completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Rhoback has released so many items within their new licensed game day collection, and it's our favorite. We wear it to pretty much every game and wear it on this podcast as well, with novel polo designs and clean hoodie and Q-zip designs for some of your favorite schools. It's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else on the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Even shared some photos on our Twitter account or X account as well, with just the stuff that's back in stock. We've kind of been waiting for a while for October, and things came back in stock on the Missouri side. Rhoback's everyday shorts or their Delta Performance pants are the perfect pairing as well. They're both super comfortable, have an elastic waistband and great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short look, but the comfort for a day on the move. Rhoback has also been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college football stars, past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. Use the code MIZ20 on Rhoback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance, polos, shorts, and more with code MIZ20. Kyle, getting back into just a little bit more for this game and maybe some game info as well for those who don't know. Of course, 11 a.m. kickoff. SEC Nation will be at this one. Drinkwitz even posted that the weight room will be closed soon because Tim Tebow will be back in there working out by himself. Always funny that when he brings that back up on ABC and Tiger Radio Network, of course, at Memorial Stadium. What about some injury updates, some other things that maybe we missed throughout the preview?
Yeah, so the big one is Caden Green, right? He starting left tackle. He's been out the last couple of games. The expectation initially when he had a minor medical procedure right before the matchup with South Carolina was 3 to 5 weeks. The game against Alabama will be 22 days after the procedure, so that's right on 3 weeks. Drinkwitz said he will be listed as questionable throughout the week. He got some rehab reps, is what Drinkwitz called them, on Monday, and worked with the team Tuesday and today, Wednesday. And the Tigers are just kind of tracking the progression to see if he'll be back and ready to go. Javen Richardson was still listed as the starting left tackle on the weekly depth chart, and Green was not listed at all. So I don't think that's super telling. It's just going to be, how he holds up in practice. I do think if he's not 100%, in my opinion, it would probably be better to just go with Javen Richardson. And I talked a bit about the way the Tigers schemed him help against South Carolina. There was a lot of kind of motioning tight ends so that they'd be on the move, getting to left tackle at the snap. There was some extra pass pro from the running backs. There were interesting other offensive line sets where Richardson moved over to the right side of the line to add like an extra heavy side and then had Brett Norfleet basically at left tackle, and then you run to the right away from Norfleet. I think if you go in knowing that it's Richardson, then you leave yourself the room to like still do all of that. And if you go in thinking, yeah, we've got our, our primary guy, our big dude at left tackle, we're going to be fine if we, kind of expand the playbook back to what we wanted it to be, knowing that he's going to hold up. And then you get in the game and you find out he's only 80% or 85%. That then puts you on the back foot, needing to adjust during the game. The other injuries that the Tigers were tracking, Drayden Norwood had a soft tissue thing going into UMass. He didn't really play that game. The Tigers sent him out for about 3 snaps, and Drinkwitz said afterward that it just wasn't where they wanted it to be. No reason to push him. He is a full go. Same with Jordan Harris, the primary blocking tight end, full go. So there was a couple things like that. I know Marquise Graciel only played a handful of snaps against UMass. He didn't get mentioned either after that game when asked for injury updates or this week when asked for injury updates. So the expectation is he's fine. And then the longer term injuries are all still the same place they have been. Logan Reichert might be back next week, but Drinkwitz seemed not super encouraged by the idea of him being ready to go next week. It was more probably an extra 2 weeks on top of where we're at now.
And Logan's still on one of those backup spots on the interior for Missouri. I think that's a good thing too, to have, your blocking tight end and Jordan Harris being healthy as well. When you were mentioning if Javen Richardson will be that starting left tackle and needs any help, assistance of blocking on that left side. And the big thing that stood out to me when I was listening to that and reading your notes from it as well, is a Drinkwitz saying, we want to be tough, but not stupid tough. You don't want to put yourself in a bind where if you put someone out there that's going to be hurt and you re-aggravate that injury or make it worse, you are just shooting yourself in the foot for the rest of the season. You don't want to do that, especially with someone who means so much and is important to that offensive line. Kyle, I'm looking at my prediction for this Alabama game that we did at the beginning of the year and just our little game-by-game preview before the season started. I had Mizzou coming out of the bye with a 38-27 loss to Alabama. I think I'm going to change mine real quick, and then we can go more in-depth on your prediction if anything changes. I still think there's a window for, of course, Missouri to pull off a win here. There's a lot of advantages, like you were talking about, on the running game. Still a little bit worried just on that secondary. I want to see, how they can slow a guy like Ty Simpson, who is one of the hottest quarterbacks on the planet right now. I'm going to lower that, though. I'm going to go 35-28. I also very chalk, just kind of answer just one touchdown game. But I think that's where I'm kind of thinking is this is a one-score game in favor of Alabama.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar spot. I don't remember what the score I predicted was, and I didn't go back to look it up. But I've been predicting a one-score win for Bama. I know I'd said a couple of times before the season that I thought this was probably where the Tigers' first loss came from, because I thought they had a pretty good shot against South Carolina, even if South Carolina had been, the team that it was expected to be. I have been saying 38-31 Alabama, and it kind of, for me, boils down to I've never seen Mizzou beat Alabama. It hasn't happened as a conference opponent. And that was a lesson I learned covering high school sports. Was there was a team I covered, and there were 2 teams in their conference who, no matter how good this team I was covering looked, they couldn't beat those 2 teams. And it was because the moment got in their head, and it just, they could play with them. They had the talent to be out there with them. And then one mistake would happen and they'd get in their heads, and 2 or 3 mistakes would spiral onto that. And, it taught me a lesson that, like, if I've never seen you do it, I'm not going to predict that you're going to do it until you show me you can. I think Mizzou can win this game. I think the talent is there. I think the way the strengths and weaknesses line up for both teams could lead to Mizzou, once again, kind of controlling the clock and being able to maybe take advantage of a mistake here or there to come out on top. But I'm not going to predict the Tigers to beat Alabama until I've seen that they can do it and can survive the moment. Something
to prove. So Missouri always says, and they have to prove that they can beat Alabama. It hasn't happened. I mean, I would look it up right now. I mean, what year do you think Eli Drinkwitz was born?
Ooh, man, I should probably know that. I have no idea.
I think it's okay. You don't know 1983. And so
So
what did we say that last time that Mizzou beat Alabama was 1975?
75.
Yeah.
Yeah, 75 and 1969 were the two times Mizzou has beat Alabama.
So in those other matchups, those 6 losses, all after Eli Drinkwitz was born. I know that doesn't really matter too much for a guy who probably didn't grow up watching either team. But I look back and I found your prediction. You had 38-30 loss against Alabama. So that's a
Pretty
little bit
much
closer.
right. Yeah, pretty much right on sticking with it.
Kyle, anything else? Anything we missed talking about this Mizzou game?
I don't think there's anything specific about the game that we missed. I feel like we should say before we go out that, if you want to come join us at Mizzou Today, it's just $1 for your first week. And I think both Kenny and I have been pumping out a lot of great content for our subscribers and, giving you as much Mizzou content as you could want. So come join us, give it a try.
Yeah, we have been talking about if you see us in public, I know we're not the most recognizable people probably in the market yet, or just, from some of the people who have been around for a lot longer. But if you find us, I mean, maybe we'll have a reward, maybe get a couple months off if you just come up to us in public. I don't know. We'll still figure that one out. But 11 a.m. kickoff Saturday at Memorial Stadium on ABC and Tiger Radio Network. Missouri entering as 3-point dogs against Alabama, according to BetMGM. Kyle will have everything you need from the football perspective. I'll try to get as much as I can from the recruiting perspective as well, and what's on the field. And Kyle will have everything the next couple of days too before Mizzou hits the road for the first time of the season. And we'll talk about that next Wednesday. Please enjoy the game. Please be safe, and we will see you next week.